Welcome, everybody, to the Channel Vision Magazine webinar featuring Dell Technologies, which is going to show us how to navigate the security landscape and enhance managed services through channel partnerships and the National Institute of Standards and Technology Framework. I'm your moderator, Bruce Christian, Senior Editor of Channel Vision Magazine. I am joined today by Dylan Baylosis, Security Solutions Principal at Dell Technologies. So now let me turn it over to Dylan.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate that introduction. You've got a great radio voice there. And thanks again for having me. I really appreciate the time, and I'm super excited to meet with you guys today. As Bruce said, we're here to talk to you guys today a little bit about the threat landscape, right? What it is, what your customers are dealing with from a cybersecurity standpoint. And how, basically partnering together in the channel and with vendors ultimately could provide, better outcomes for end users and for you guys as a business, right? And so real quick agenda for the call. I'm going to talk about, what your customers are facing from a cybersecurity standpoint, right? And sort of what the threats are that are out there today. From there, we'll dive into, what it looks like to become a MSSP and sort of the reasons why you might want to build your own security services or buy, right? And I think some of this conversation also will end back to, if you guys are a channel partner, why you might want to be looking to outsource or bringing up security conversations with your customers today. From there, we'll talk a little bit about the NIST cybersecurity framework, what it is actually, and how it can help drive really strong conversations and engagement with your customers. And then finally, I'll share with you some managed security solutions to consider, what they are and how they help their clients, how they help your clients. At the end, we'll leave some time for Q&A. And yeah, again, just really excited to be with you guys today. And the reason why I'm excited, I talk day in, day out, probably 80% of my time with small and medium-sized business customers, your customers, and other MSPs and channel partners about cybersecurity, right? And it's, it is sort of an intimidating topic. So hopefully, my aim today is to demystify it a little bit and give you guys a path forward and bringing up these conversations with your customers. And so let's start talking about, why your customers care. I think every one of us can attest to the fact that if you go on LinkedIn every week, or if you, look at Google or whatever, the news, you're going to see a new cyber hack, right? A new breach took place. And obviously the impacts of those breaches are pretty devastating. And sort of what we've seen in the cybersecurity space over the last couple of years, these attacks aren't going away. They're actually increasing exponentially, right? So as you can see here, we have, down below almost 50% of an increase in phishing attacks in the first half of last year. And that led to $12.3 billion in damages. And I think the scary thing is when you think about that number, that huge sum of money, is it's not like they just went after one giant account, right? This is a death by 1,000 cuts when it comes to cyber criminals. They are going after small and medium-sized businesses, asking for tens of thousands of dollars. They're not going after the big fish, right, who they know have strong security controls in place. And so, we're seeing other numbers that bear that out, right? Huge growth in ransomware. Huge increase in social engineering to get credentials. We're seeing all this happen every day, and our businesses are telling us that they're not comfortable or able to keep up, right? So a huge number of them don't feel like they can recover or respond accurately or effectively to one of these breaches, and they don't, frankly, have the people to keep up. And so that's a huge problem and a huge risk to businesses everywhere. That needs to be laid out to these customers, right? But how did we get there? Let's talk about basically the evolution of technology and sort of why things have gotten to where they have gotten, as I mentioned in the previous slide. 5-10 years ago, maybe a little bit before that, really IT organizations, businesses only needed to focus their security efforts on the network or on the endpoint, right? And so if they had a strong setup in terms of their policies and procedures around firewalls or antivirus, that was usually enough. But as we all know, cloud consumption models have been growing greatly, right? Every application is almost in the cloud these days. Remote work has obviously boomed since COVID. And so this increase in connections and increase in, our data being everywhere, essentially the threat vector or the perimeter that these cyber criminals have to take advantage of has grown exponentially. And as I'm sure you guys all are aware, working in IT budgets aren't always top of mind, right? And so when it comes to cybersecurity, those budgets have lagged, which has led to, lots of increased pressure and stress on IT staff, on cybersecurity professionals, and it's obviously, led to a lot of increased business risk, right? You're having these overworked, overstressed out employees having to manage various different functions of cybersecurity when that's not really their specialty. And so as you can see, we're in this world that cyber criminals can just pick off, right? They know that mom and pop shops, they know that 50 to 100 employee businesses are faced with these realities, and that's who they're going after. And so I have good news, though. This sounds like a pretty bleak story, but I actually do have good news. The market's responding to it. And why are they responding the way they are? Well, it's all been driven by the customers and the customers' fear, uncertainty, and doubt around, can they respond to these incidents? What happens if they do? What happens if they are breached? And ultimately, what's going to happen to the business if their name is on LinkedIn or if their name is in the news for leaving their customers' critical data out there? And essentially, it all comes down to what the customers are going to think, right? And that's all because of a report that came out in 2019 by Salesforce that essentially called out that a huge majority, 84% of customers are more likely to stay loyal to a company if they have strong security controls. And I think it makes a lot of sense, right? If you are a consumer and your information was leaked by say your cable provider or your doctor's office, you're probably going to be pretty turned off by that, right? You might look for another provider of those services. So for a business, that's the loss of their current customer base. And then to go out and replace those customers, they're going to have this scarlet letter on them that's going to make it really hard for them to generate new revenue to make up for what they've lost in their current customer base. So for a lot of these small and medium-sized businesses, that could be devastating, right? They cannot afford to lose this amount of revenue due to a cyber crime. And so, over the last year, we have really seen IT security spend increase. The amount of IT budget that's been recommended by large groups such as IBM has grown dramatically, up to 14%. And large enterprises are leading the way. Obviously, they have more funding at their disposal, but they are, kind of setting the standard for what organizations, need to be doing, right? Spending almost half of them are spending $1 million on cybersecurity and technology today. Coupled with that is the fact that, this increased spend is driving a lot of growth in the job market. But as, you'll see in the next couple of slides, that isn't always a good thing, right? We're having some trouble with the, skilled labor required to perform these cybersecurity issues. So we'll basically talk on that in a little bit, right? But so, that puts us in a really unique opportunity as MSPs, as channel partners, as cybersecurity professionals, to be sort of at the forefront to our customers in driving cybersecurity conversation. Especially with MSPs and partners, you guys are already entrenched in your customers' environments most of the time, right? So you have a really good foot in the door to start talking about security. And so what I see a lot of times is MSPs, wading into those waters, really without too much thought behind it, and, kind of struggling, right? And so essentially what we're seeing now is you have two options as an MSP or as a channel partner, right? You can either, become a full-blown MSSP, or you can look for a partner in the cybersecurity space to outsource some of that work. And so I basically laid out a case here, and full disclosure, I work at a vendor, so I might be a little biased here, but I think kind of taking my Dell hat off a little bit, the facts are the facts, and a lot of this is really going to depend on the profile of your business as an MSP or channel partner, and what you guys can effectively take on, right? So if you go and try and build your own MSSP services, your managed security solutions practice, essentially what you're going to have to do is it's going to be a lot of upfront costs, right? You're going to have cost of labor. So, you know, for a really, I'd say, enterprise level security team, you're going to have up to 5 security analysts to provide that 24/7, 365 coverage, investigation that, you know, basically can operate in the middle of the night, can operate during holidays, vacations, whatever. And so you're going to have that upfront cost, and that labor isn't cheap, right? The increase in jobs has made the market extremely competitive because there is not the labor to support those jobs. So prices for these professionals are very high, right? I'd say at a minimum, you're looking at $100K out the door per analyst, right? So that's $500K up front. Then you're paying for the technology that they're going to leverage to support your customers' environments. And because oftentimes, even with 5 analysts, they're going to be overworked, they're going to be stressed, they're going to look for opportunities to go out into this hot job market and find a job that's less stressful and pays more, right? So you're going to have to deal with a lot of turnover. So, you know, obviously the HR issues around that, the customer issues around getting new analysts, you know, every so often, that's going to be something that you guys are going to have to handle. From there, you're adding another pot to the fire. And so what I see a lot of times in MSPs that do provide some of these services is, hey, they're already doing, you know, help desk work. They're already doing implementations of larger projects, right? So maybe some of the smaller tasks that don't seem like a big deal, maybe patching a Microsoft version or tweaking a setting on a firewall, some of that might get overlooked. And simply by leaving that vulnerability open, you're opening the door to a cyber criminal to come on in and exploit your business or your end user's business. And if that happens, if you are an MSSP, you're taking on that risk yourself, right? They're going to point the finger at you. And when it comes down to, you know, customer information, private information, that's going to be pretty uncomfortable conversation for you and your end user, right? And so if you look over at the partner side of things, right, the decision to partner with any sort of cybersecurity vendor that might be out there today, you're getting a more predictable and reliable expenditure, right? So that you really are only worried about the cost of technology and the service, which isn't going to fluctuate too much depending on, you know, what you're doing. And then you're offloading all of those key security tasks and procedures over to our team or another security vendor's team, right? And so they'll be able to scan the environments constantly for potential vulnerabilities. They'll be able to, you know, look at threats 24/7, 365, holidays, middle of the night, whatever, and then perform the appropriate actions on your behalf. So you don't really have to take on any of that. You just have to essentially, you know, sign the checks to pay for it, right? And then what this also creates is a shared risk model. So, you know, you already have a great business with your customers today. You do a lot of great work on the help desk, on the hardware deployment side, whatever it might be. Well, hey, Dell or whoever is taking on the cybersecurity piece, something goes wrong, you know, you can point the fingers at us, right? And maybe the relationship is not as hurt by a breach. But a lot of times what you'll see is that's the chances of that happening are not zero, right? I can't say they're zero, but there are certain levers that are in place to avoid full-blown breaches, right? Whether they be quarterly remediation, whether it be a emergency incident response retainer, where if you guys have the technology in place today, you know, we can get right to work and really offset the amount of damage that can be done and mitigate the likelihood of your name or your end user's business name appearing up on LinkedIn, right? So that said, whichever route you go, one guiding light or North Star that I, you know, talk about with my customers daily on how we want to develop a strong cybersecurity practice is the NIST cybersecurity framework. So this came out around 2013 by an executive order from the government who realized that, hey, businesses are at a huge risk from, you know, nation states, from, you know, crime syndicates online. We need to help guide these end users and customers and businesses towards, you know, what is an effective security strategy and a posture. And so they came up with the National Institute for Standards and Technology's cybersecurity framework. And I really like this because it breaks everything down into 5 functions that obviously we all kind of can look at these 5 here and understand at a high level what they're doing for our businesses, right? And so most MSSPs or most MSPs that kind of venture into security work are only focused on the highlighted portions, right? They have an endpoint solution in place, antivirus, maybe EDR. They've got firewalls. They've got, Active Directory set up for their customers, two-factor authentication, things like that. And then a number of, various different security applications that are sort of the first lines of defense against cybercrime. But as you can see, when we have the NIST cybersecurity framework here, we're talking about a lot of different types of activities, a lot of different types of engagements. And so it really, kind of cements yourself, if you're talking about this with your customer, as a trusted advisor, as a subject matter expert in this field. And so, hey, why should you use it? Just like what I said, right? It helps you stay relevant with your customer. You're bringing to them something that, basically you can measure and track your progress on, and, explain the why behind the reasons you're presenting certain things to them. With all of these different areas that we're in, it's going to help you grow deeper and wider within an account. And a lot of the, outcomes of some of these engagements are more technology that are driven towards you guys, more potential licenses that can be purchased and then you guys manage, right? So there's a lot of potential to grow your business from that standpoint as well. And then the last thing, it's just going to, it's a good practice to ultimately reduce your end user's risk and your risk, right? So if you guys start implementing certain practices like this with your customers, you're basically going to be able to, create a timeline of events that can take place in order to, get your end users' security environments where they need to be. And if something goes wrong, you can point to like, hey, this is what we were doing. Here's where we were trying to get to. We had a roadmap. Maybe there were budget constraints on your end or whatever. It can ultimately, kind of take some of the blow off of you guys. And then so if we break down each function, I won't go into every one of them, right? Because I think some are self-explanatory around the protect piece. But there are a few that I do want to call out in terms of managed security solutions that you can be looking to partner with a vendor on. And so the first function of the NIST framework is the identify function. And essentially, this is just, it's pretty self-explanatory, but we're looking for gaps or weaknesses or areas of exploit that could be taken advantage of by a cyber criminal. Some of the most effective solutions that we can put into place, I've highlighted here below. And so, if I talk to a customer, my first conversation, they really don't have anything too elaborate in place. The first thing I'm going to recommend is vuln management, because this is going to give a snapshot of their current vulnerabilities, right? So again, maybe it's a Microsoft patch that needs to be updated. Maybe it's a setting on a firewall that needs to be updated. Basically, you can see these in a single pane of glass and then come up with a plan to patch these issues up, change settings, whatever it's going to do to basically negate the risk of a cyber criminal coming in and using that against you. That's the first thing I always recommend my customers to have into place. The next one, penetration testing and attack simulation, is probably a little bit more advanced, a lot further along in the process. But at a baseline, if you kind of want to see where your weaknesses lie up front outside of vulnerabilities, then you can do what we call pen testing or attack simulation. Essentially, a one-time or monthly test of your current technologies or cybersecurity technologies and procedures by a certified ethical hacker, or there's also softwares that help out with this. And basically, it's just designed to really put some strain on your current systems and see where the weaknesses lie. And then the last one, this is, I think, very important because I'm sure a lot of you know, employees are businesses' biggest liabilities, right? Whether they're clicking on emails they shouldn't be clicking on, links they shouldn't be clicking on, picking up USBs in the parking lot and putting them in their laptops. I've seen that done before. They are a huge liability to businesses, right? So having an effective way to train them, to have them watch videos and kind of track their progress is huge to mitigating a business's risk. And then sort of what I think is almost the powerhouse of the NIST framework and in terms of what it can provide is managed detection and response, or MDR, because it really helps support these three functions, detect, respond, and recover, in a single solution, right? So essentially what MDR is, if you're not familiar, is taking a software like an EDR or an XDR software, which is just designed to look for certain types of behaviors or anomalies that are indicative of a threat, then roll up an alert. Well, basically the managed detection and response portion offloads all the investigation and forensic work that's required to validate a threat that comes through on one of these software platforms, right? And so if you guys are taking this on your own, obviously you guys are probably going to be digging through tons of alerts on a day-to-day basis for, a large population of your customers. So this completely offloads all that investigation, all the threat hunting. It helps with, basically there are deployment packages which can help, your workload as well. And it really provides just a fantastic holistic approach along with certain safety nets, right? I think I mentioned before, remediation hours are oftentimes included in a lot of these solutions, along with emergency incident response retainers. So it really, again, can help your businesses and you as an MSP feel really good about the protection of your clients and end users. And so, with that said, that's really sort of the bulk of my conversation. Hopefully this was helpful in terms of, kind of walking through, what the process would be for, becoming an MSSP or providing these services to your customers, why it's important, and ultimately how you can start having these conversations with your customers. I did want to, quickly give a quick shout out to the Dell Expert Network, who I'm here on behalf of today. They make all this possible with Channel Vision. And so, basically the Dell Expert Network is a resource for MSPs that we have here at Dell that can help you guys, basically scale your business and not have you guys focus on some of the monotony or day-to-day of what you guys do as an MSP. So, as a part of the Dell Expert Network, you basically get dedicated resources. Maybe it's someone like myself who can help out with cybersecurity. You get access to certain kinds of tools and platforms like TechDirect, which helps with support tickets, so you're not having to manage that in whatever clunky way that might be going on today. And then you also can get paid for sending customers our way, right, and making hardware purchases for us with Dell Advantage Rewards, which essentially is a platform to give you guys credit here at Dell with us to, maybe you need to buy a laptop for one of your customers at the MSP or at the partner. And so you can use that on yourself. You can use it to help acquire business, buy a potential customer a laptop, things like that. There's lots of great benefits to joining the Dell Expert Network. And so hopefully you guys will consider, taking a look at that, and I'll dive into that further in a second. But I like to share this slide as well because, there's a mixed population on this call today. So if you guys are 100% MSP or IT consultants, you don't really do any hardware reselling, this is a great program for you, and I would definitely encourage you to reach out to Aaron or myself after this call to learn more. If you guys do some resale, but then also have the managed services, it could make sense, but I can't say for sure. So maybe let's have a deeper conversation around it. And if you're just focused on hardware resale, you're not going to be a good fit, but we can take care of you over on our channel partnership side of the house. So hopefully that was helpful in kind of detailing who is a good fit for this program. And then to kind of wrap this up, I'll give you guys a quick call to action on what we just talked about. So from a current situation standpoint, I would just ask you guys to sit down and think about what you're doing today, right? What security services are you providing today, if any? Are the services that you're providing today enough? Do you guys have something in place for advanced threats, or are you guys just focused on, sort of the basics of cybersecurity, right? Endpoint, firewall, things like that. And then, basically, if you are kind of in that initial stage, how do I build these services out for my customer base? Do I want to build them or do I want to partner, right? And, can I take on the risk of doing something like this for my business? And I think it's also important to say, hey, what's the upside for me? Hopefully I've done a good job of explaining why I feel like this is a hot market and a unique opportunity for, a lot of us today here in the IT field. So I would just sit down with, whoever your business leaders are back at your, outfit and have those conversations. Say, look, we need to get into this. There's a lot of money here. There's a lot of great stuff that we can do. And then from there, if you get the buy-in that you need, start evaluating solutions, right? Have initial conversations. Talk to as many vendors as you want to. look at Forrester Wave, look at Gartner Magic Quadrant, get a good feel for what's out there, then figure out what works best. I'm always open to those conversations, so I have my information on the slide as well. Aaron's information is there if you want to learn more about the Dell Expert Network. But really, that's all I have for today, and hopefully we'll have some good Q&A here in a second. So Bruce, back to you.
Well, thank you, Dylan. That was wonderful. Yeah, one of the slides that you had there was talking about the managed detection and response, the MDR.
Yep.
And it seems like a lot of businesses offer their own flavor of MDR. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the differences among the products that you've seen.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so a lot of times you do have multiple different players in this MDR space, right? And you really can't figure out the differences until you start kind of reading the fine print, right? It's one of those things. But so, oftentimes what I'll see is, different businesses have different ways and how they do their investigation and how they do their response. So some completely rely on technology like AI and machine learning to basically validate a threat that comes up through the software. And then based on, sort of the playbook that has been, installed within the technology, it's then providing, just kind of like stock answers to what's going on. So that's one big red flag for me. I prefer to not rely on the technology as much. I prefer if there is a managed stock on the back end, actually like a human element to it all. So that's one thing. Other caveats with MDR, some only look at data coming in and out at the endpoint, right? Where others take a more holistic approach. So with XDR is essentially just covering your cloud, your network, your endpoints, identity services, things like that. Whereas some only focus again on the PCs, the laptops, the servers. And I think that's leaving a huge gap that could be exploited by cyber criminals. So I really think it's about the response. I really think it's about what data they're taking in. And then I think the final thing is how they actually, respond if things hit the fan. We have here at Dell, we have a incident response retainer as our part of our package, but others don't have that stock. Some have an upcharge for it, some don't offer it at all. So it's just something to consider there as well.
Okay. You also mentioned the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST. As a company, how should I get started with this model? And is it okay to add functions in increments rather than, jumping right into the entire environment?
Yeah, I think honestly that's probably the best way to go about it, right? Especially for a lot of, the customers that we're going to be working with. A lot of them probably don't have the appetite, the budgets, or frankly the time to, actually, do all the tasks that the NIST framework recommends, right? So I think it's really about taking an honest assessment of where your end user is as an organization in cybersecurity, trying to figure out, hey, what can we build off of, and then okay, well, what's going to give us the biggest return in terms of reducing threats over time, and starting there, and then just mapping out a plan to have something that covers each function. Right? I think MDR does a good job of kind of killing three birds with one stone. But there's other things that you can implement first that will also provide a great level of protection. Okay.
I'm curious because we know that there are breaches all the time. The cyber criminals are very, very successful. So I'm wondering, in your opinion, what could make the NIST framework even stronger?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, if they could, I don't know, maybe get like a social media account and do some cybersecurity influencing. I don't know, maybe that would help, right? I think it's just spreading the word, really evangelizing for more cybersecurity throughout the entirety of our customer base. I mean, I think that would be the biggest thing. I think what NIST does really well is makes it very easy to understand what we need to do and the why behind it, right? And I think it does, if you follow it and if you put into place as many of those functions and technology that relates to those functions, it's going to be really hard for cyber criminals to break in. And honestly, if they get to your environment, they see you've got something like MDR set up, they see they're getting stonewalled at every turn, they're not going to spend a lot of time there. They're going to leave, they're going to look for somewhere else that doesn't have this level of security put into place, right? So I think just the more and more people learn about it and understand it, and are hearing about it from our MSP community, from our partner community, that's going to make it the most successful, right? Just getting the word out and actually people leveraging it.
Okay. What should be some of the main criteria I should look at when evaluating potential partners in the cybersecurity space?
Great question. So I'm sure you guys are aware, cybersecurity is a bloated marketplace at this point, right? Everybody's trying to get a piece of the pie. And so I think one of the things that you want to look for is, hey, what is the reputation of this company? What's their funding look like, right? We're already seeing a lot of consolidation in the cybersecurity space. So you don't want to, put your eggs all in one basket of a startup when you can't guarantee that they're going to be around in a couple of years, right? So I think pedigree is a huge thing that customers should be looking at. Things that I mentioned earlier around sort of the fine print of MDR services, right? Like how an organization actually responds to threats, how they respond to and how they investigate things, what they have in terms of an incident response practice. I think items like that are going to be really important in your evaluation. And then I think using analyst firms like a Forrester or a Gartner are huge as well. Like I go read those all the time, right? I try to learn, hey, where are our shortcomings here at Dell? What do we do really well? But also, what is our competition doing well? What are other vendors in the marketplace doing well? And kind of using that to guide my conversation. So, yeah.
All right. What about do any of the services that you've referenced as options to include in an MSSP partnership work together? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think depending on where you go, there will be a certain amount of orchestration between the different platforms. But so, for example, one thing we do here at Dell is if we see an alert come through, right, our team is going to investigate. Our team is going to, put the breadcrumbs together and try to understand what happened, right? And say, for instance, a cyber criminal is able to gain access via a vulnerability, an old Microsoft version that wasn't patched. Well, what you're going to be able to do, or what you're going to want to do at that point, is then take assessment of the rest of your environment, right? So you have vulnerabilities. So let's go to our vulnerability management platform. Let's run a scan and see what's changed, right? Why didn't this get caught the first time? Or is there anything else out there that might be newsworthy or noteworthy that we need to go patch or remedy? So I think that's one strong way that they can work together. And then, hey, okay, we patched this one vulnerability. We went and did a scan. We found some more. We took care of those. Well, hey, now we can actually go and run like maybe a pen test or breach attack simulation and actually see if the changes that we made were effective and if they did what we needed them to do, right? So I think that's kind of how it all works together. It's sort of this cohesive unit. You might not be able to find you're not going to be able to find a solution that fits everything that I covered in one pane of glass, but they all kind of live cohesively and all serve important parts of hardening, a customer's environment.
Okay. All right. Dylan, because of what's going on, cyber insurance has really become big business. And as a business owner, what should I look for in accepting a cyber policy, and what should I make sure that's covered?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in cyber insurance and sort of what all that entails. What I can say is oftentimes what cyber insurance policies are going to look for are, what technologies and what procedures or policies do I have in place to, help prevent actually, ultimately using the cyber insurance policy, right? And so, having something like an MDR, having something like vulnerability management, having a strong practice for how you guys actually do your patching and manage your systems from a security standpoint, all of those are going to come back to, the underwriter at the insurance organization. And they're going to look favorably on organizations that are doing that already, right? So what you're going to actually gain by investing in solutions like this is you're not going to have to pay as much of a premium on your insurance. And then, ultimately when you have, like, something happens, shit hits the fan, for lack of a better term, you're going to, hopefully have some sort of emergency incident response retainer in place so that you really don't even have to use that deductible, right? And this is just kind of auxiliary knowledge. I don't have any, firm examples, but from what I understand, it's always a little bit weird. It's always a little bit kind of wonky with what actually cyber insurance will pay, how much they'll pay. If they deem something to be like a negligent issue, then they might say, hey, we're not going to pay as much here, right? So I think it's important to have more layers in cyber insurance. I would almost look at some of what I'm putting into place, or some of these solutions that I've talked about today, as a de facto insurance policy. But then, obviously you probably have to have one depending on what field you're in. So having that on top of it is only going to, make you feel, help make you sleep better at night, essentially.
Yeah. All right. Well, I really like this question. I read that cloud-based email systems are at a greater risk of being leveraged by the bad guys, basically. So what can be done by security teams to better defend against cyber attacks from cloud environments?
Yeah, so that is a great question. I definitely see that cloud-based email systems are one of our top potential threats, right? And then and the area that is exploited, probably one of the most that I see with customers, right? And so oftentimes you have, bad guys that have gained access to, an employee's credentials and are just sitting there lying in wait, watching the emails go in and out. And oftentimes they're looking for, accounts payable type of email accounts, and looking for an opportunity to send an email that looks very similar to your email address as an accounts payable rep. And then, say, hey, actually, this is a mistake. Please send the check to our new, bank account, right? And, you have people that do it. I've ran into lots of customers that I've gotten checks sent to the wrong, have had their customers send checks to the wrong bank account. So it's something I see a lot of every day. And I think when it comes to how can security teams do a better job protecting against cyber criminals for cloud, is they got to see the data, right? I think that's the first step. They got to be able to see what's coming in and out. They have to be able to analyze that information. And so I mentioned before that some MDR providers only are looking at the endpoint. And this is like one of the main reasons why I would caution against using somebody who only focuses on the endpoint, because you're just leaving yourself extremely vulnerable. But if you have an XDR solution in place, our team at the SOC should be able to see the types of behavior that's going on in the email platform, and understanding kind of what should be happening, what shouldn't be happening, and be able to see when one of those spoofed emails come through or something like that. So I think it's about seeing the data, and then I think it's also educating your employees, by going back to that awareness training piece, educating your employees on what they actually need to be doing, what they shouldn't be doing as it relates to email. That's also a huge area of opportunity for a lot of our users as well.
All right, just take a couple more questions. First, next to security, the other big thing that we hear about all the time is artificial intelligence. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about using some of the artificial intelligence that's out there in security?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think I mentioned it before. Excuse me. That we have some vendors out there that solely rely on AI and machine learning to perform their response, which it's a good starting point, right? We shouldn't rely on it, I don't think. So I think the vendors that do MDR the best, or that do certain types of security the best, maybe leverage AI to work for them, and then do simple validation. I think all of us have been on ChatGPT and have asked questions to AI that you're like, that's not right. So I think we can't rely on it too much, but I think it can absolutely be a tool to assist in our aims, right? And so that's why we, here at Dell, we have it in our technology, and I think a lot of other vendors do too. And I will say also, while it is something that helps us, AI is also something that can be used against us and against our customers as well. So you have, I don't know if they're doing it on ChatGPT, but I have heard instances of some of these cybercrime syndicates, basically asking AI like how they can better, improve their aims, right? Like maybe there's a certain payload they want to make better. Let's ask ChatGPT what they think about it, right? So there's a good side and a bad side of AI, as again I'm sure we all know, but I think it definitely can help when used effectively.
Okay. Can you tell us how much it costs to join the Dell Expert Network program?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question. There's no cost to join the Dell Expert Network. It's simply, reaching out to Aaron or myself, and we'll kind of get you set up on how to join that program. And again, I think there's a lot of upside to it. There's no real risk or true requirements from you guys as MSPs or IT consultants. So there's just a lot of upside and assistance in how we can help you guys, run your business.
And do you offer an SLA?
Yeah, so it just depends on what vendor you go to. It's either going to be an SLA or an SLO. But yeah, there's usually some of those put in place.
Okay.
For different types of.
All right. And what about hardware resellers? Can they join the network?
The Dell Expert Network. So for that one slide I put up there, hardware resellers probably wouldn't be the best fit for the Dell Expert Network, simply because a lot of what they do is predicated on making money off of the top, right? Like making some margin off of the hardware sales. And so this program wouldn't be a good fit for you, but the Dell Partner Program absolutely would be a good fit.
All right, great. I think that will wrap it up. Our thanks to Dell Technologies Security Solutions Principal Dylan Baylosis. Dylan, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your time,
sure.
Guys.
Now, before we go, I want to remind you to register for the CVX Expo 23, taking place November 14th through 16th at the Talking Stick Resort and Casino in Scottsdale, Arizona. All qualified partners can register free of charge, and you will receive full access to the exhibit floor, all educational classes, networking events, as well as all meals, snacks, and beverages served during expo hours. To register, simply go to cvxexpo.com. Finally, I want you to remember that you can access this webinar and all other Channel Vision productions on demand by visiting our website at channelvisionmag.com. And now, from all of us at Channel Vision Magazine and for Dylan Baylosis and Dell Technologies, thank you for attending. Have yourself a safe and prosperous day.